This is Adrian Cole, a man who built an empire from polished glass and steel, the kind of billionaire whose name opens doors and silences rooms. One stormy night, Adrian made a choice that would unmask the past he thought he'd buried. He stepped out of his car and saw a homeless boy half dead in the rain, wearing the exact necklace Adrian had given to someone years ago. How did that necklace travel from a boardroom promise to a broken child in an alley? What vow was forgotten, and who paid the price? Let's uncover the truth in this powerful and emotional story of class, dignity, betrayal, and redemption. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you're new here, kindly subscribe and join us for unforgettable stories filled with lessons, love, and second chances. Let's get started. Rain came down in sheets, turning the city into a watercolor of smeared neon and flooded gutters. The limousine's wipers carved brief windows into the night as it rolled to a stop at a red light. Inside, Adrian Cole watched the reflections slide across the glass, his face fractured into 100 tired, immaculate versions of himself. He adjusted his cufflink by habit, more ritual than need. Power was supposed to feel solid. Tonight, it felt like a thin coat over something hollow. A motion in the periphery tugged his attention. In the alley to the right, 3 figures huddled around a fourth, their shadows jerking in ugly rhythm. The chauffeur, Tom, noticed the shift in Adrian's posture. "We're late for the call, sir," he said, making it sound like a question and a warning. Adrian leaned closer to the window. The boy on the ground was small and starved, soaked through, clutching something against his chest as the kicks landed. "Stop the car," Adrian said, already reaching for the door handle. "Sir, this neighborhood." Tom started, but Adrian was out in the rain before the sentence ended. The cold slammed him like a truth you can't turn away from. He strode into the alley, voice sharp as glass. "That's enough." The men scattered without pride, without even a glance back. Survival knows when power walks in. Adrian stepped over a puddle smeared with oil and blood and knelt. The boy looked 16 at most, his face a map of bruises, breath a flicker. His hands were white-knuckled around a thin chain. For a second, Adrian saw only metal and desperation. Then the streetlight caught the pendant, a modest oval locket, scuffed at the edges, and the world inside Adrian lurched. It couldn't be. The engraving, though worn, was unmistakable. "AC, keep your promise." God, he breathed, a word he rarely used. He had given that necklace away years ago in a boardroom bathed by morning light and careless ambition. He remembered the feel of it in his palm, the way the person, a woman with eyes full of belief, had closed her fingers over it as if he'd handed her a future. How was it now here, hung on the throat of a boy who might not see sunrise? "Don't," the boy rasped, flinching when Adrian's hand hovered near the locket. "Don't take it. It's all I have." "I'm not taking it," Adrian said, surprised by the softness in his voice. "I'm trying to help." Sirens lived in the distance, never quite near enough for certain neighborhoods. Adrian shrugged off his coat, laid it over the boy, and shouted back to the car, "Tom. Call an ambulance. Now." Tom was already there, umbrella useless in the screaming wind. "He's ice cold, sir." The boy's gaze snagged Adrian's like a hook. Even through pain, it held an impossible steadiness. "Promise," he whispered, tapping the locket with 2 shaking fingers. "You keep it, promise." The light turned green. Traffic pressed forward and hissed past, indifferent. Adrian stayed kneeling in the gutter, the rain washing blood into a rust-red stream around his shoes. He pressed 2 fingers to the boy's neck, faint, but there. Half dead, clinging to a promise Adrian wasn't sure he deserved to speak of anymore. Adrian didn't know the boy's name. He didn't know why fate had carried that locket through the years like a secret indictment. But he knew this, there would be no walking away. Not this time. Behind them, thunder stitched the sky. In front of them, the city waited, the boardrooms and headlines, the knife-edged choices, the past that refused to stay buried. Adrian squeezed the boy's shoulder, an anchor in the torrent. "Hold on," he said. "I'm not leaving you." The ambulance siren finally rose, urgent and human. The necklace rested against the boy's pulse, gleaming like a memory that had found its way home. The paramedics lifted the boy with the brisk tenderness of people who have learned to hurry without jarring hope loose. Adrian walked beside the gurney, rain flattening his hair, the streetlight dragging a trembling halo over the locket on the boy's chest. He kept staring at the engraving as if it might blink and say he was mistaken. AC, keep your promise. His initials. His vow. His failure. When the ambulance doors thudded shut, the city dimmed into the wet hush of receding sirens. Tom hovered with the umbrella, but Adrian didn't move. The alleys stink, old beer, hot wires, spoiled milk, pulled a memory from the back of his skull like a thorn finally worked free. Morning light on a different day, years back. The Cole Holdings conference room was all honeyed wood and quiet power, the skyline crisp and blue beyond the glass. A woman sat across from him with her elbows on the polished table, hands folded over a worn canvas folder. She was 20-something, composed in a way that made people underestimate the steel beneath. Elena Ward. She'd pitched a literacy incubator that would hire and train homeless teens as peer tutors, and he'd felt something wake up in him as she mapped out how a city could change one classroom at a time. "Sign the grant," she'd said softly, "or don't. But if you do, don't let it be a headline. Stay with it. Show up." Her eyes were serious enough to sober him. "Keep your promise." He'd laughed, nervous, boyish, and rolled the locket along his knuckles before setting it in her palm. "Then take this," he'd said. "So I remember who I said I'd become." He'd had the jeweler engrave it that morning, a melodramatic flourish he'd intended as a private joke with himself. Elena had closed her fingers, smiled like the sunrise had chosen a human face, and whispered, "I'll hold you to it." Back in the alley, the rain tasted like tin. How had the locket run this gauntlet from Elena's steady hands to a boy whose breath stuttered like a dying engine? He pictured Elena's smile flicker to static, imagined missed calls, unanswered emails, the way urgent fires in a fortune could pull you away from the smaller, truer ones. He remembered the first time Victor Hale, his then new partner, had called the incubator brand risk, and how easy it had been to nod and file hope under later. Adrian climbed into the back of the ambulance before anyone could tell him not to. The boy's lips were gray. His lashes clumped with rain. The medic pressed an oxygen mask to his face. "What's his name?" she asked. "I don't know," Adrian said, and the admission felt like an indictment. "But the necklace is mine." He caught himself. It was mine. The medic didn't look up. "Well, now what matters is he makes it." Adrian wrapped his fingers around the rail beside the gurney, anchoring himself to something that wasn't profit or spin. The locket winked with each bump in the road, tapping the boy's sternum in a stubborn rhythm. He thought of Elena's voice. "Stay with it. Show up." For the first time in years, he intended to. "Hold on," he murmured to the boy, as much a command to himself as a prayer. "I'm going to keep it this time." The emergency room doors burst open with the metallic cry of hinges straining, letting in a rush of rainwater and urgency. The paramedics pushed the gurney forward, calling out vitals in a clipped, practiced tone. Nurses descended on the boy like storm clouds parting to let through lightning, hands fastening monitors, voices layering over one another. "BP dropping, get a line in. We need 2 bags, wide bore." Adrian Cole followed, his soaked suit clinging like a penance, leaving a trail of rain across the white tiles. For a man who usually made hospitals bend around his donations and gala speeches, it felt oddly humbling to stand in the fluorescent chaos where wealth was irrelevant unless it bought seconds. A nurse intercepted him at the threshold of the trauma bay. "Sir, you'll have to wait outside." Adrian's jaw tightened. I'll pay for whatever team, whatever equipment, just save him. The nurse didn't even blink, too accustomed to desperate families. Money doesn't restart hearts, sir. Please, outside. He let her push him back, the swinging door snapping shut with a rubbery thud. He stood in the corridor, rain dripping onto the polished linoleum, listening to the muffled commands. For a moment he wanted to leave, to let this be another story filed away under Not My Problem. But the locket's engraving pressed against his memory like a branding iron, keep your promise. Minutes stretched into something larger. A janitor mopped near the vending machine, glancing at Adrian in his designer suit as if wondering what corner of the city had spat him into this hallway. A mother rocked a feverish child 2 chairs down, humming something low and ancient. Adrian sank into a plastic seat, the kind that forced even billionaires to look small. The door swung open. The attending physician, a wiry woman with a halo of frizz escaping her cap, pulled down her mask. He's stable for now. Malnourished, hypothermic, multiple contusions. He'll need observation. She studied Adrian's face. Family? Adrian hesitated. The truth, no, just a stranger, a boy I found in an alley wearing my past like a wound, felt impossible to compress into a word. Yes, he said instead, voice low but steady. I'm responsible. The doctor nodded without further question. Paperwork at the desk. We'll keep him under. When she left, Adrian approached the bedside. The boy's face was slack with sedation, but his fingers still curled faintly around the locket, as if memory could outread anesthesia. Adrian stood there longer than he meant to, listening to the hiss of oxygen, the soft beeps marking survival. Tom appeared in the doorway, awkward with the umbrella still in hand. Sir, the board is waiting on the call. I can patch you through. Adrian didn't turn. His eyes stayed on the boy. Cancel it. Tom blinked. Cancel. But the Singapore merger. Cancel, Adrian repeated, firmer now. His hand brushed the edge of the blanket, a gesture almost fatherly. He has no family. Now he does. The word startled him, hanging heavier than the air conditioner's drone. For a man who had bartered identities and futures like stocks, he realized he had just signed a contract with something far older than money. He pulled a chair close, sat down, and let silence be the only witness. For the first time in years, Adrian Cole stayed. The boy stirred days later, a restless shadow against the antiseptic quiet of his hospital room. Adrian had returned each evening, slipping in like a guilty guardian, never announcing himself, never staying long enough for questions from the staff. Tonight, however, he remained by the bed as twilight bled orange into violet across the blinds. The boy's lashes trembled. His lips parted, a cracked whisper escaping. Where? You're safe, Adrian said, leaning forward. You collapsed in the rain. The doctors are taking care of you. The boy blinked at the ceiling as if deciphering a foreign language. Slowly, he turned his head. His gaze snagged on Adrian's suit, then traveled to his face. He seemed to weigh whether this man was angel, demon, or something less reliable, merely human. You tried to take it. His hand drifted toward the chain resting against his collarbone, the locket gleaming dully in the low light. No, Adrian said softly. I recognized it. He hesitated. Where did you get that necklace? The boy's throat worked, his voice brittle as old paper. It was my mother's. She said, it came from a man she trusted. A man who promised her things. Safety. A future. His eyes unfocused, as though seeing her in the sterile air. But then he disappeared. And she disappeared too. The words dropped like stones in water, rippling through Adrian's chest. He forced his breath to remain steady. Your mother, what was her name? Elena. The syllables cracked. Elena Ward. The name hit him like a strike across the face. The memory flared with ruthless clarity. Elena in the conference room, sunlight threading her hair as she pressed the locket to her heart. Elena at the gala where Victor Hale had whispered in Adrian's ear about cutting dead weight. Elena's voice echoing, "Stay with it. Show up." "She died," the boy murmured, staring at some horizon beyond the blinds. "I was 8. One day she went out to meet someone. She never came back. People said she was betrayed. Left with nothing. I grew up with nothing but this." His fingers clenched the locket. "She said if I held on to it, someday the truth would find me." Adrian couldn't stop his hands from trembling, so he pressed them into his knees, hiding the quake. Shame was an old companion, but now it wore a face, the hollowed cheeks of a boy who had lived the consequences of Adrian's broken vow. He cleared his throat. "What's your name?" The boy turned his head, eyes glassy but fierce. "Liam. Liam Ward." The name sealed it. Adrian's chest constricted. His fortune had multiplied 100-fold since the day he placed that locket in Elena's hands, but in the silence of this room, he felt bankrupt. "Liam," Adrian said, trying the name as if he could carry some of its weight. "I knew your mother. She was extraordinary. She believed in people," Liam said bitterly. "And people destroyed her." Adrian flinched, words catching in his throat. "Not people," he thought. "Me." A silence swelled, filled with machines keeping time. Then Liam's eyes closed, exhaustion reclaiming him. Adrian sat back, staring at the boy, at the locket that had traveled through betrayal and grief to land here, accusing him wordlessly. The storm outside pressed against the windows, thunder murmuring like judgment. He realized this wasn't chance. It was summons. The fragments of Elena's memory lived here, fragile but unyielding, in her son. And Adrian knew, whether he deserved it or not, he had been called to answer. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, pouring gold over the skyline. From his penthouse office, Adrian Cole could see the city bow to his empire, skyscrapers with his name etched on their facades, fleets of cars bearing his logos, contracts signed with handshakes that moved markets. On paper, he was a titan. In his body, he felt like a hollow shell walking in a tailored suit. The boardroom buzzed with low conversations as directors shuffled documents, whispering about quarterly margins. Adrian stood at the head of the obsidian table, glass of mineral water untouched beside him. His assistant flicked through slides on the screen, but Adrian's attention was elsewhere, back in the hospital room where a boy named Liam Ward clutched a locket like a lifeline. "Adrian?" Victor Hale's voice cut through the fog. His longtime partner, equal parts ally and adversary, leaned back in his leather chair with a smile sharp as polished marble. "We need your signature on the Singapore acquisition. Hesitation costs millions." Adrian's gaze flicked to the paper. Words, numbers, signatures, symbols of power that once thrilled him. Now they looked like hieroglyphs scratched into the sand. His pen hovered. He remembered Liam's cracked whisper, "She believed in people. And people destroyed her." He set the pen down. "Table it for now." The room stiffened. Victor's brow creased. "Table it?" "Adrian, this is momentum. Investors smell hesitation, and hesitation smells like weakness." Adrian's lips twisted. "Or maybe strength is knowing when profit isn't the priority." The directors exchanged wary looks. Victor leaned forward, voice dropping like a dagger. "This isn't like you. Don't forget, reputation is everything. Your name collapses, the empire collapses. Reputation. Fragility disguised as granite." Adrian saw it now, the empire balanced not on wealth, but on trust, perception, and the silent promise that he was always in control. A promise not so different from the one he'd once made to Elena, the one engraved into that cursed locket. The meeting adjourned with murmurs. Victor lingered. "You're distracted," he said, his tone honeyed with suspicion. Don't let ghosts ruin what we've built. Adrian didn't answer. He turned toward the skyline, the city sprawling like an organism of light and glass. From here, poverty was invisible, alleys blurred, broken children dissolved into the texture of progress. Yet he had seen. He could not unsee. Back in his office, the silence pressed heavier than the chatter had. Adrian walked to the cabinet where he kept private keepsakes, medals, awards, framed clippings. At the bottom drawer, wrapped in velvet, was another necklace. Not Elena's, but its twin, his copy, the pair he'd commissioned in that same youthful burst of idealism. He lifted it, the cool metal biting his palm, and set it on the desk beside contracts worth billions. The juxtaposition mocked him. A token of a promise kept against the machinery of promises broken. His phone buzzed. A message from Tom, Liam's condition stabilizing. He asked for you. Adrian exhaled, running his thumb over the engraving. The Empire could wait. This fragile boy in a hospital bed, wasn't just a ghost. He was flesh, consequence, and perhaps, a chance to start over. For the first time in decades, Adrian Cole turned his back on the towers of glass, left his pen uncapped on the table, and walked toward a truth money could neither sign nor buy. The Cole mansion was an architectural marvel, a labyrinth of marble floors, sweeping staircases, chandeliers heavy with crystal. From the outside, it looked like a dream realized. Inside, however, its echoes carried more silence than laughter. Adrian walked into the study that evening, still carrying the weight of his encounter with Liam. His daughter, Emily Cole, sat at the mahogany desk, head buried in a textbook. Papers were scattered like fallen leaves, numbers scratched and erased into angry smudges. Her fingers tugged nervously at her blonde ponytail as she hunched lower, as if the equations might somehow shrink into solvable form. Emily, Adrian said gently, though his voice carried that natural command he rarely shook. It's past 9. You've been at this since after school. Emily didn't look up. I have a math exam tomorrow. If I fail again, her voice cracked. You'll be disappointed. The word struck him harder than any market downturn. He crossed the room and crouched beside her chair. Emily, when did you start believing that my love for you depends on grades? Her eyes lifted, swimming with tears. Because you're perfect, Dad. You always win. Everyone says you never fail. How can I be your daughter and keep failing? Adrian froze. His empire had bought him respect, fear, envy, but here was his own child, crushed beneath the illusion of his invincibility. He reached to wipe the smudge of pencil across her cheek. Emily, I've failed more times than I can count. I've just been better at hiding it. She looked at him skeptically, as if fathers weren't supposed to confess weakness. He forced himself to continue. The truth is, I've broken promises. Hurt people I shouldn't have. And now I'm trying to make it right. Emily frowned, confusion creasing her brow. With that boy in the hospital? He blinked. How do you know about him? I overheard Tom on the phone, she said, her voice dropping. Dad, why would you help a homeless kid? You don't even come to parent-teacher meetings. Why him? Her honesty burned. Adrian's throat tightened. Because he reminded me of someone I should never have forgotten. Emily's eyes filled again, but this time with something softer. I wish someone would remember me when I keep failing. The words landed like a blade. Adrian gathered her into his arms, awkward in the way only powerful men could be when confronted with vulnerability. You're not failing, he whispered into her hair. You're learning. And I see you, Emily. I do. She clung to him, small sobs shaking her shoulders. In that moment, Adrian realized that success had made him blind to the most urgent truth. His own daughter was drowning, quietly, in the shadow of his reputation. He kissed the top of her head and pulled back. Maybe, he said slowly, help comes from places we don't expect. Emily sniffled. Like that boy? Yes, Adrian said. Like that boy. The morning sun spilled over the mansion gardens, catching dew on trimmed hedges and roses that lined the winding stone path. Adrian had invited Liam for fresh air now that the doctors allowed him limited movement. Wrapped in a borrowed sweater, still pale but steadier, Liam walked slowly, hands tucked into his pockets, eyes scanning the wealth around him with a mix of awe and unease. The grandeur seemed to press down on him rather than inspire. Emily sat on a wrought iron bench with a textbook open across her lap, her pencil tapping rhythmically, frustration etched on her young face. Adrian stood nearby, his expression torn, half relief at her determination, half sorrow at her silent struggle. Liam paused, watching her, then glanced at Adrian. She's not understanding it, is she? Adrian raised a brow. And you can tell that how? Because I've been there, Liam replied quietly. When numbers stop being numbers and start being walls. He walked closer, cautious as though crossing into sacred ground. Do you want me to try? Emily looked up, defensive. Try what? Liam crouched to her level. To explain. Not like a teacher. Like a friend who knows what it feels like to get it wrong. Adrian stiffened. His instinct screamed that this was his daughter, his world, untouchable by someone from the streets. But before he could speak, Emily handed Liam the pencil with an almost defiant tilt of her chin. Fine. Show me. Liam took the pencil, drew a quick sketch on the margin of her notebook, 2 staircases side by side, one steady, one broken. Math's like building stairs, he explained. If one step is cracked, you'll always trip no matter how hard you try to climb. You don't keep climbing, you fix the broken step. Emily blinked at the drawing, then looked at the problem on the page. For the first time in weeks, the numbers didn't blur. Her mouth opened slightly. So. I just go back to the broken step. Exactly. Liam smiled, the first genuine smile Adrian had seen on his face. You fix what broke, then you climb again. Doesn't matter how slow. You'll get there. Emily's pencil moved quickly now, her posture shifting as confidence grew. Within minutes, she solved the equation that had made her cry the night before. She gasped, a mix of triumph and disbelief. I did it. Adrian's chest tightened. He watched his daughter's eyes light with hope, not fear. He looked at Liam, thin, scarred, yet holding himself with a quiet dignity, and saw not just a survivor, but a teacher forged in hardship. Liam met Adrian's gaze. His voice was steady, deliberate. Mr. Cole, you saved my life. Let me repay you. Let me teach your daughter. Not just math, but what it means to fall and still climb again. Adrian's instinctive response lodged in his throat. Pride warred with humility, fear with recognition. His daughter waited, eyes bright, caught between them both. In the silence, the garden seemed to hold its breath. Adrian finally exhaled. If Emily agrees, then yes. Teach her. Emily grinned, turning to Liam. Deal. Liam nodded, clutching the locket beneath his sweater, as if Elena herself had guided him to this moment. The Cole limousine pulled up in front of Crestwood Academy, the city's most prestigious private school. Its Gothic towers loomed against the morning sky, banners fluttering like symbols of tradition and untouchable privilege. Parents in tailored suits escorted their children up the stone steps, the air alive with chatter about scholarships, internships, and Ivy League futures. Emily stepped out of the car first, clutching her backpack, a mix of nervousness and excitement on her face. Liam followed, dressed in clean but borrowed clothes Adrian had insisted he wear, khakis too long at the hem, a button-down shirt slightly frayed at the cuff. He adjusted the collar self-consciously. To him, the school's grounds might as well have been another planet. Whispers began almost immediately. A cluster of mothers near the fountain exchanged pointed glances. Their manicured nails flicked toward Liam as their voices carried just enough to be heard. "Is that Adrian Cole's new project?" one sneered softly. "Imagine letting that kind of boy near your child," another added. "A charity case in Crestwood? What is this place coming to?" The words sliced the air, sharp and deliberate. Emily stiffened, her cheeks burning. She looked at Liam, who kept his gaze forward, jaw tight. Years of surviving alleys had taught him the art of silence, but here, silence felt like surrender. Inside the classroom, the tension thickened. Emily's teacher hesitated when Liam sat beside her, confusion flickering across her polite smile. During group work, some students moved their chairs farther away. A boy in a blazer leaned in just enough to mutter, "Street rat," under his breath. Emily's fist clenched. She wanted to scream, but Liam's calm steadiness kept her anchored. Instead, she raised her hand. "Excuse me," she said loudly enough for the room to pause. "This is Liam. He's helping me because I was failing. And if anyone has a problem with that, maybe you should look at your own grades before judging mine." A ripple of surprise moved through the room. The teacher blinked, caught between decorum and discomfort, then cleared her throat. "All right, let's focus on the assignment." At the back of the class, Liam leaned close and whispered, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Emily whispered back. "You believe in me when no one else does. Why shouldn't I believe in you?" The words hit Liam deeper than he expected. For years, he'd been invisible, dismissed as worthless. Now, in this echoing classroom of privilege, a billionaire's daughter had chosen to stand with him. At pickup time, the whispers continued, now laced with venom. A parent approached Adrian directly as he waited by the car. "Mr. Cole, surely you don't mean to let your daughter be tutored by him. It's bad optics. People talk." Adrian's eyes narrowed. For once, he didn't calculate the stock price of his response. "Let them talk," he said coolly. "My daughter's education isn't about their optics, it's about her future." The parent stepped back, chastened. Emily climbed into the car, her chin high. Liam followed, quiet but not small. Through the tinted glass, Adrian watched the school shrink behind them. He knew Crestwood had seen many lessons taught in its classrooms, but today the most important one had been delivered not from a teacher's podium, but from the courage of a girl who refused to bow to prejudice. The city's financial district never slept, but its pulse changed after dark. Boardrooms that hummed with polite negotiations during daylight now became arenas of hushed deals, secrets exchanged like contraband. Adrian Cole's office tower stood tallest among them, but tonight he wasn't the only man prowling its glass and steel halls. Victor Hale, Adrian's oldest business partner, leaned back in his leather chair inside a private suite one floor below Adrian's. The room was dim except for the glow of a desk lamp, throwing his sharp features into stark relief. He poured himself a drink, slow and deliberate, savoring the amber swirl as though he were sipping victory itself. Spread across his desk was a folder labeled Ward Literacy Initiative. The faded document still carried Elena Ward's handwriting in the margins, passion scrawled in blue ink, plans for classrooms that could have changed lives. Victor smirked at the memory. "Naive," he muttered, tapping a finger against her signature. From the shadows, his assistant asked, "Sir, should I shred the originals?" Victor's lips curled. "Shred? No. Fire destroys cleaner. No trail. No doubt." He pulled a silver lighter from his pocket, thumb grazing the engraved initials. With one flick, a flame licked up the corner of the papers. Elena's vision, her hope, curled into ash. He watched it burn, but memory unspooled against his will. He remembered the day she'd come to plead for continued funding after Adrian grew distracted. She had stood in this very room, fierce and desperate. "You promised us," she had said, voice trembling with anger. And Victor, cold, precise Victor, had smiled. "Promises are for people who can afford to keep them. You can't. Walk away." When she didn't, he'd ensured her project collapsed. Whispers spread, doors closed, debts mounted. And then, her disappearance. Victor had never asked questions. He preferred outcomes. Now, years later, her son had surfaced. Liam Ward. A name Victor had hoped history would erase. He clenched his jaw. If Adrian had seen that locket, then the past wasn't buried, it was clawing its way back. His assistant hesitated. What if Adrian connects it? The necklace, the boy. Victor cut him off, his voice ice. Adrian is sentimental, but he's weak. I've built this empire's spine while he softened. If he insists on chasing ghosts, then we'll remind him ghosts don't win board votes. He poured another drink, lifted it toward the city lights. Adrian doesn't know it yet, but the same loyalty that makes him hesitate will be the rope that hangs him. Outside, thunder grumbled, rolling across the skyline. Upstairs, Adrian stared at his reflection in his office window, unaware of the inferno burning just one floor below. In his mind, Liam's words echoed, she believed in people. And people destroyed her. The question lingered, sharp and merciless. When the truth came out, would Adrian discover that the worst betrayal hadn't been circumstance, but the man he trusted most? The Cole Mansion's library was vast, a cathedral of mahogany shelves that smelled of leather and old paper. That night, its silence was broken only by the scratching of pencils and the soft rustle of pages. Emily sat cross-legged on the rug, a spread of textbooks before her. Liam sat across from her, leaning on one elbow, his sweater sleeves pushed up as he worked through an equation on a scrap of paper. Adrian stood at the doorway, unnoticed for a moment, watching. The scene tugged at him in ways the skyline never could. His daughter, usually tense and guarded around tutors, was laughing, actually laughing, when Liam scribbled a crooked drawing of a superhero battling math problems. You're ridiculous, Emily giggled, brushing her hair from her face. Ridiculous works, Liam countered with a grin. See? You solved it without even realizing. Emily looked down at the completed problem, eyes wide. Wait, I did. The pride in her voice rang like music in the cavernous room. Liam leaned back, satisfied. Told you. Math is just bullies in disguise. You face them, they back down. Adrian cleared his throat softly, stepping into the warm circle of lamplight. Emily jumped slightly, then beamed. Dad! Look, I solved 3 in a row. On my own. Adrian's chest tightened. He knelt beside her, scanning the work. Correct. Perfect, in fact. He kissed her forehead, surprising even himself. I'm proud of you, Emily. Her eyes shone. Liam helped me see it differently. He makes it make sense. Liam shifted, suddenly shy under Adrian's gaze. She did the work. I just showed another way. Adrian studied him for a long moment. This boy, thin and scarred from streets Adrian rarely thought about, was restoring something Adrian's fortune had nearly broken in his daughter. Not just her grades. Her confidence, her laughter, her belief in herself. They worked late into the night, Emily growing more animated with each problem solved. At one point, she slumped against Liam's shoulder, exhausted but smiling. You're more like a brother than a tutor, she murmured before drifting towards sleep. Liam froze, emotions warring in his eyes. For so long he had been rootless, invisible, unwanted. The word brother lodged deep, filling a hollow he hadn't even realized how much it ached. Adrian noticed. He stepped forward, laying a hand briefly on Liam's shoulder. She's right, he said quietly. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who shows up when it matters. Liam swallowed hard, unable to answer, but the grip he kept on the locket at his chest spoke for him. Adrian extinguished one of the lamps, letting the room soften into twilight. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel like a museum of silence. It felt lived in, warm, healing. And as Adrian watched his daughter doze and the boy she now called brother keep vigil beside her, he realized, perhaps redemption wasn't found in grand speeches or public gestures. Perhaps it started quietly, here, in the fragile, luminous bonds being stitched back together under the watchful gaze of forgotten promises. The grand boardroom of Cole Holdings gleamed with polished marble and cold authority. Rows of shareholders filled the space, murmuring like restless waves, anticipation thick in the air. Cameras lined the back wall, press, investors, rivals, hungry for any crack in Adrian Cole's carefully maintained empire. At the head of the room sat Adrian, composed but solemn. Beside him, Victor Hale radiated confidence, his crisp suit immaculate, his smirk a weapon polished for occasions like this. On the agenda, the Singapore acquisition, a deal that would cement their dominance. But beneath the surface, something far more explosive simmered. Adrian's hand brushed against the pocket of his jacket, where the locket rested, cool against his palm. Liam sat quietly in the gallery, Emily beside him. Though young, both carried an expression of expectancy, as though truth itself was about to walk into the room. Victor began, his voice smooth as silk. Ladies and gentlemen, we stand on the brink of a deal that will expand our influence across Asia. This acquisition ensures our future. But hesitation is weakness. He cast a sideways glance at Adrian. And weakness has no place in leadership. A ripple moved through the shareholders. Adrian leaned forward, fingers steepled, gaze steady. Victor is right about one thing, leadership matters. But true leadership isn't about hiding weakness. It's about facing truth. Victor chuckled softly. Adrian, must we waste everyone's time on sentiment? These people came for numbers, not philosophy. Adrian's eyes hardened. He reached into his jacket, pulled out the locket, and held it aloft. The cameras zoomed in instantly. Gasps echoed. The engraved letters caught the fluorescent light, AC, keep your promise. This, Adrian said, his voice resonant, was a promise. A promise to Elena Ward, whose literacy initiative could have saved thousands of children from the streets. A promise I abandoned when I listened to the wrong voices. His eyes flicked to Victor. Voices that called her vision weakness. Victor's smirk faltered. Adrian, careful. You're rewriting history. No, Adrian countered. He opened the locket and placed it on the table. The history is written in ashes. Elena Ward disappeared after her work was sabotaged. But her son survived. He gestured toward the gallery. Liam stood slowly, shoulders straight despite the tremor in his frame. This is Liam Ward. He carries the cost of our betrayal. Murmurs erupted, investors shifting, reporters scribbling furiously. Victor rose, his mask cracking. This is madness. You'll drag this company down over some street orphan's sob story. Adrian stood, towering, his voice thunderous. Don't call him that. He is the evidence of what we lost when greed drowned conscience. And I won't let our empire thrive on silence any longer. Victor's face darkened. You're destroying yourself. No, Adrian said firmly, meeting his gaze. I'm saving what matters. The room stilled. For the first time, Adrian Cole chose truth over image, integrity over empire. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment a billionaire publicly admitted to failure, and promised redemption. In the gallery, Liam clutched the locket around his neck, his mother's memory burning bright. Emily slipped her hand into his, a quiet vow of solidarity. The showdown was no longer about contracts. It was about conscience. And in that moment, for all the world to see, Adrian Cole finally kept his promise. The ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers, golden light spilling across marble floors and tables draped in white silk. The annual Cole Foundation Gala had always been a spectacle of wealth, an evening where the city's elite flaunted philanthropy like jewelry. But tonight, the air was different. Instead of hollow displays, something deeper stirred: anticipation, curiosity, even tension. Reporters lined the back, their pens and cameras ready. Guests murmured in clusters, whispering about Adrian Cole's explosive boardroom confrontation days earlier. Some called him reckless, others brave. Few knew what he intended tonight. The stage was framed by cascading curtains, a podium at its center. Adrian appeared, not in his usual tailored arrogance but with a gravity that silenced the hall. He paused, scanning the audience, the investors, the critics, the skeptics. Then his gaze found Emily, standing proudly beside Liam at the side of the stage. He exhaled and began. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying through the hall, "for years, I measured success in towers of glass, in profit margins, in my name etched across skylines. I thought that was leadership. I was wrong." Murmurs rippled. Adrian's voice grew steadier. "There was a woman once, Elena Ward. She believed education could rescue children from the streets. She asked me to stand with her. I promised her I would. But when doubt whispered, I turned away. She lost everything. And the world lost her light." He paused, pulling the locket from his pocket, holding it high. Gasps echoed. "This necklace was my vow. I failed to keep it. But fate brought it back to me, through her son." He gestured toward Liam. The boy stepped forward nervously, the spotlight catching his locket. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, hesitant applause began, swelling into a wave. Adrian's eyes glistened. "Tonight, I announced the Ward Foundation. Its mission: to give every child, no matter their circumstance, access to education, dignity, and hope. And this foundation will not carry my name, it will carry hers." The applause thundered now, cameras flashing like lightning. Adrian reached for Liam's hand and guided him to the podium. "And it will not be led by me, but by the boy who survived what we allowed to happen. Liam Ward." Liam's throat tightened, words catching. He gripped the podium, trembling. "My mother believed in people. For years, I thought she was wrong. But tonight, maybe she was right." His voice cracked but steadied. "If I can help even one child avoid what I went through, then her dream lives." Emily clapped first, tears on her cheeks. The crowd followed, rising in ovation. For once, applause wasn't for spectacle, it was for truth. Adrian placed a hand on Liam's shoulder, pride softening his features. "I lost a promise years ago," he said into the microphone, voice breaking. "Tonight, fate gave it back to me." The chandeliers glimmered like stars. For the first time in decades, Adrian Cole didn't feel like the richest man in the room. He felt human. And that was worth more. The Ward Foundation Learning Center stood on the edge of the very neighborhood Adrian's limousine once avoided, a place where alleys smelled of rust and rain, where laughter was once rare and futures dim. Now, the building glowed with painted murals, the sound of children's voices spilling from classrooms like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Inside, Liam Ward paced at the front of a classroom. He wore no suit, only a rolled-up shirt and a chalk-smeared grin. The blackboard behind him bore not just equations but drawings, bridges, staircases, ladders. Each sketch was a story, a metaphor to help young minds climb out of despair. "Math isn't about being smart," he told a boy slouched in his chair. "It's about not giving up when the numbers bully you. One step at a time, you fix the broken step, then climb again." The boy squinted, skeptical, then scribbled something in his notebook. When he finally solved the problem, his eyes widened. I did it." Liam smiled, recognizing the glow of triumph he'd once seen in Emily. "Exactly. You can." After class, children swarmed around him, tugging at his sleeves, waving notebooks. Among them was a thin girl with tangled hair, clutching her backpack to her chest. She lingered while others left, then whispered, "My mom said I'll never be more than this." Liam crouched, his heart squeezing. He reached under his shirt and pulled out the locket, his mother's, the one that had survived Allie's betrayal and storms. He pressed it into her palm. "This belonged to someone who believed in people, even when people failed her," he said softly. "Now it's yours. When you feel like you can't go on, hold it, and remember, you're worth more than anyone ever told you." The girl stared at him, eyes wide. "But, it's yours." Liam's voice wavered, but his smile held. "It was never just mine. It was always meant to be passed on." From the doorway, Adrian and Emily watched. Emily's hand slipped into her father's, her eyes bright with pride. Adrian's throat tightened as he saw in Liam not just Elena's son, but a man who had turned suffering into strength, betrayal into purpose. Adrian whispered to Emily, "That's real wealth. Not skyscrapers. Not mergers. This." Emily nodded. "Family, even when it's chosen." Outside, the city still roared with its usual hunger for power and reputation. But within the center's walls, a different empire was being built, quietly, child by child, promise by promise. Liam rose, his gaze sweeping the classroom. The locket no longer hung from his neck, yet he felt its weight everywhere, in the children's laughter, in their hope, in their belonging. For the first time since Elena Ward's voice had been silenced, her promise had been kept. Not by fortune. Not by reputation. But by resilience, love, and second chances. And so, the cycle of suffering was broken, replaced by a cycle of light.